Hey everyone, Nick Marzinski here at TrappingLight.com. In my last several videos, I've been talking about retouching, and I've been talking about tools in Photoshop like the spot healing brush and the clone stamp tool, and how those can be used to fix blemishes on faces and change things that you don't like about the image and that sort of stuff. Now that I've talked about those two images and I've gone through blemish removal, which for me is the first step in image correction for portraits, I want to move into talking about some of the other issues that can come up when you're dealing with pictures of people's faces and how you can correct those. So right here I've got a picture of my daughter, and I'm going to just zoom in right on her face because that's what we're going to be dealing with. And I've already done my blemish removal. So if you look here in my layers palette, I've got this blemish removal layer, and if I turn it on and turn it off, you can see what I've done. It's just been a couple of spots that I've cleaned up using the spot healing brush. Okay, now I want to concentrate on correcting some of the other issues that have cropped up. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about three things. I'm going to be talking about teeth, I'm going to be talking about eyes, and I'm going to be talking about skin. Specifically for the teeth, if you look here, you can see that there's a little bit of a yellow cast to her teeth. I'm going to talk about how you can get rid of that. For the eyes, we're going to want to brighten the eyes, brighten the iris right here. And if I zoom in real close, you can see that this highlight that she's got in her eye has this red flare around it. I want to get rid of that. And finally, when it comes to skin, I'm going to talk about how we can soften the skin to make it look natural and to just get rid of some of the unevenness that everybody has on their skin. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is to deal with her teeth. So we've got a little bit of a yellow problem on the teeth right here. And the easiest way to correct that is to use a hue saturation adjustment layer. So now when I'm doing my edits, for the most part, I'm doing them on either additional layers like I've done with the blemish removal, or I'm doing them on adjustment layers. I'm never editing my background image, okay? There's a lot of people that say, well, you should just duplicate your background, hit Control J, and create a background copy. You can, and that's fine. I generally don't if I don't need to, because I know enough not to edit on that background layer, and I'll just simply create a new layer that has all the stuff on it that I need. But creating a copy of your background layer is also one way to deal with that. So let's move on to teeth. Okay, in order to correct the teeth, I'm going to be using what's called a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'm going to go over to my adjustment layer button down here at the bottom of the layers palette, which is this half moon icon, and I'm going to select hue saturation. That's going to bring up this dialog box, and for the teeth where there's yellow, I'm going to, on the top drop down here, select yellows. Once that's done, I'm going to just drop the saturation, and I don't want to necessarily drop it all the way, but I'm going to drop it to say the mid 50s or so, and that's what works in this image. Now this setting that I'm saying is pretty much for this image, so you do it to taste, and it's applying it to the entire image. You can see if I move this, it's applying it to the entire image, and we'll take care of that so that it's applying it only to the teeth. In this case, when I'm making my adjustment, I'm really looking at the teeth right here and deciding how much is enough when I'm dealing with adjusting the slider. So for saturation, I think that minus 58 is enough. I'm also going to increase the brightness a little bit. So we'll increase that to, say, 42. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so now I've got my settings dialed in, and I'm happy with the way that the teeth look. However, like I said before, it's applying it to the entire image. To change that, all I have to do is I have to invert this layer mask here, turn it black by hitting Control I. And then once that's done, I can grab my brush tool by pressing B on the keyboard and dropping my brush size. Now, when I'm using a brush to do retouching like this, I've got my hardness set to 0. So I want a nice round feathered brush. And then I'm just going to simply paint right over the teeth. And since it's only correcting for the yellows in the image on that hue saturation layer, I don't have to worry very much about hitting something like her gums, because her gums are predominantly red. It's going to really only be focusing on the yellow. And so that gives me a way to very easily make sure that my adjustment is targeted just to the yellows of the teeth. The other thing that I can do with this hue saturation layer is, if you look at her eyes, there's also a slight amount of yellow there. And I can go in here as well. I'm going to just drop the size of my brush a little bit and clean the yellow out of her eyes as well. And that's going to also brighten them slightly. So this is what it looked like before. You can look here on the teeth and on the eyes. and that's what it looked like afterwards. So now that I've done that, I'm going to actually label the layer to teeth so that I know later on, if I have to come back to it, what that adjustment layer was used for. Another way to brighten the eyes, if you really want to brighten them, is to use, you can do it a number of different ways. Another way is to just use a levels adjustment. Come in here, drag your white point over to brighten the eyes to about there. And then again, invert. Grab your brush, make sure the foreground color is set to white, so you're painting white on a black layer mask, and then come in here and then paint in some brighter eyes. It's really up to you which method you want to use. None of these are necessarily better than the others. In this case, to me, this looks actually a little bit too bright. If I zoom out and take a look, yeah, that looks a little too bright to me. So I'm going to lower the opacity of this just to make it so it's not quite as bright. And then I'll just call this one eye brightness. Finally, there's two other things that I want to make, the two other corrections that I want to make to her eyes. I want to really make the irises here pop. So in order to do that, I can use, there's a number of different ways, but I'm going to use a hue saturation layer because everybody, including Elements users, have that. I'm going to drag the saturation over to the right, and I don't really want to change the lightness too much. So that works. Again, if you haven't gotten the theme yet, it's create the effect, see what it's doing on the area that you want, and then invert the mask, and then paint the effect back in using a brush that with the foreground color set to white. Finally, so this is irises. Then finally, we're going to correct this, the red around the highlight here. Another hue saturation layer. I'm going to drop the saturation all the way down to 0. Invert. I'm going to zoom in. Move over. And that takes care of that. So if I disable these, you can see how each one of those effects works. So that's the before, that's the after. We're not talking about huge changes to the image. I'm not doing any reshaping of a face or anything. We're just talking about how to accentuate things that we want to call attention to, like her eyes, like, you know, white teeth, like a skin that doesn't have any blemishes on it. So that's really all these retouching tools are designed to do. They're just designed to bring out what's already there and to really accentuate that, and to get rid of everything that doesn't accentuate her face, such as, you know, the little bit of dinner that she's got on her cheek there. Okay. So now that we've done our corrections on the image in terms of blemish removal, in terms of cleaning up the eyes and the teeth, at this point I want to move into skin softening. Okay? Now, there's a ton of ways to do skin softening. Most of them involve blurring the skin using something like a Gaussian blur or a surface blur filter. Okay? And those techniques work, but the best technique that I've found involves actually using a sharpening technique called a high pass filter, but then inverting the result and blurring the result. And it's a little complicated, but let me show you how to do it. Now, the first thing that you have to do is you have to create a new layer that incorporates your background as well as all of your edits. And the way to do that is to do a stamp visible command. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Control, Shift, Alt, and E. Or if you're on a Mac, it would be Command, Shift, Option, and E. And that creates this new layer here that incorporates all of these layers that are below it in the layer stack. So this layer has all of our edits on there. If I disable these edits now, it doesn't make any change to the image because this image has already incorporated them. But if I disable this now, you can see how all of the edits that I've disabled below it in the layer stack are now completely gone. So This is the layer that we're going to be working on for doing our filter. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the blend mode here to linear light. And I'm also going to invert it by pressing Control I. Okay, now actually I have to say this, this image looks pretty cool. But this is just the start of the process. Okay, once it's inverted, I'm going to go up here on my menu bar to click Filter, Other, and High Pass. For the high pass, I'm going to want to set my radius fairly high to the mid-20s, usually about 23 to 25. Okay, and for the moment, like I've said with all of the other adjustment layers that I've been using, ignore what the image looks like right now because we're going to be painting this effect and we're going to be doing a lot of changes. So although it looks bad halfway through the process, once we get to the end of it, you'll see that the effect will actually work well. So I've run my high pass filter. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run another filter on this image, and that's going to be a Gaussian blur. So I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And for this, in this case, I want to keep the radius fairly low, between 3 and 5. Okay, so I'm going to take my radius to 3.1, click OK, and now that's applied. Now, what you can see when I've run this is that there's a fair amount that these two filters combined have introduced a fair amount of color contamination into the image. So if you look down here at her lips, if I disable that layer and then enable it, you can see that there's a bit of red that's coming down onto her chin here. And that's the most visible example of that, but there's also some gray that's coming up here as a result of that, and we want to get rid of that color contamination because otherwise what I'm going to end up doing is brushing this on using a layer mask. If that color contamination is there, it's going to transfer onto the finished effect, so we need to get rid of that. The way to get rid of that is to use the blend if sliders in the layer styles box. So to get there, you're going to, on this layer, you're going to double click on it, which brings up the layer style box. And at the bottom of this box, there are these blend if sliders. And what these do is they allow us to feather in the effects of this layer. Okay, so it's telling me, do I want to blend this layer or do I want to work on blending how the underlying layers work with this layer? In this case, I'm actually going to want to be blending this layer. And I've got this slider on the black side and this slider on the white side that I can use. But these sliders are actually splittable. So I can split this black slider into two pieces. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to feather this effect or make it so that it kind of creates a bit of a gradient of this effect. So in order to split them, I'm going to be working only with the black slider here. In order to split it, I'm going to hold down the Alt key or Option key on a Mac and then start sliding this to the right. And you can see that it splits. And now I'm feathering that effect in. And if I get fairly high, you can see that that color contamination in the image disappears. And once that's done, I can click OK. So now I've got this image where everything is really, really soft. At that point, it's just a matter of adding a layer mask. And I'm going to actually add a black layer mask by holding down the Alt or Option key and pressing the Add Layer Mask. And then I can just grab my brush and start painting. And what you can see is that this, now I'm painting on the layer mask. By the way, you have to make sure that the layer mask is actually selected, not the layer. So I'm painting on the layer mask and I'm painting with a brush with my foreground colors again set to white to show this layer here. So I'm painting over it and you can see what it's doing to her skin. Now I'm staying away from things that I don't want to hide. So some of the lines on her face, her nose, her eyes, her eyebrows, her mouth, her hair, that sort of stuff I don't want to soften, but I do want to soften everything around there. Now I'm done with the softening. To me this looks a little bit plasticky. So then what I'm going to do with this layer selected is I'm going to just take the opacity down and bring in a little bit of the underlying skin tone below that to just sort of feather the softening effect to make it look make it look so that her skin doesn't look like it's plastic. So that's pretty much it for how to do some of the common changes to retouching faces. Let me just center this right there. This is what the image looked like before I started. And actually, I'm going to zoom right into her face so you can see. So that's before, and that's after. Again, I'm not talking about huge effects to the face. This isn't about reshaping a face or anything like that. It's just simply about accentuating certain elements of the face and hiding other elements. Okay, so that's it for retouching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them either on the blog at trappinglight.com or on my YouTube channel. My name again is Nick Marzinski with trappinglight.com. Thanks for watching.